to build together. In 2015, after a decade of failed Conservative policy, Canada's economy was flat. Economic growth, job creation, wage growth, all were stalled thanks to a Conservative government that believed cuts and austerity were the answers to everything. Canadians chose a new team that was willing to invest in people and in their communities. We know that even though we live in the best country in the world, better is always possible. And while there's more work ahead of us than behind us, we've spent the last 4 years moving forward, and we've got the record to show for it. Poverty is way down. Unemployment is at historic lows, and job creation is way up. And it's because our team rejected Conservative cuts and austerity and chose instead to invest in the middle class and people working hard to join it. We
put more money in the pockets of Canadians by lowering taxes for the middle class and increasing them for the 1% wealthiest Canadians. We stopped sending checks to millionaires so that we could give more to single-parent families, more to a mother juggling 2 jobs, more to a father who's having trouble making ends meet. We renegotiated NAFTA and guaranteed privileged access to our greatest trading partner at a time when protectionism and uncertainty dominate in the U.S. We strengthened the Canada Pension Plan because in a country such as ours, seniors should always be able to make ends meet. At the same time, we are conserving nature. We will ensure that the air remains clean and that our waterways are safe. We must take care of our environment, and we especially owe that to our children.
These kinds of investments are making a real difference in people's lives. And this fall, Canadians once again get to vote for the kind of Canada they want to live in. We've all got a choice to make. Keep moving forward and build on the progress we've made, or go back to the politics of the Harper years. The Conservatives like to say they're for the people, but then they cut taxes for the wealthy and cut services for everybody else. But as Canadians well know, that's the wrong approach, because you can't cut your way to prosperity. That's why we chose to move Canada forward by investing in families, workers, and communities, by having faith in Canadians. In 4 short years, Canadians have created over 1 million jobs. We negotiated new health accords with the provinces and territories. The new Canada Child Benefit is helping parents with hundreds of dollars tax-free every month. And we've lifted 900,000 Canadians out of poverty, including 300,000 kids. But we know there's still lots more work to do. One thing I hear a lot from young people here in Victoria is that they can't even imagine buying a home right now. Owning a house should be a realistic life goal. It's where you set down roots, where you raise a family, where you grow old. But young people hoping to buy their first home, just like their parents did a generation ago, are facing a tough housing market. That's why, earlier this year, we launched the new first-time homebuyers incentive, which provides Canadians with up to 10% off the purchase price of their first home. We took a big step in the right direction, but we know a lot of people are still struggling, especially in places like Victoria or Vancouver, where the cost of housing has skyrocketed due in part to housing speculation by foreign owners. So today, we're announcing that a new Liberal government will expand the incentive to give even more help to people living in Victoria, the Greater Vancouver area, and the Greater Toronto area. In those markets, we will increase the value of a qualifying home from approximately $500,000 to nearly $800,000. And we're also sending a message that Canada is not a place for those who wish to speculate in the housing market. To tackle the effect foreign speculators are having on the affordability of homes in our biggest cities, we will also introduce a modest 1% annual tax on residential properties owned by people who are not Canadian and do not live in Canada. And that's on top of local taxes already in place. I want to make it clear, though, that Canadians living abroad or permanent residents in Canada will not be affected in any way. We're doing this because we want our markets to stay stable and affordable. Now, Conservatives talk a big game about making life more affordable for Canadians these days, but let's not forget that they voted against the first-time homebuyer incentive when they had the chance. Under a Liberal government, we will continue to invest in families while finding new, innovative solutions to the challenges facing Canadians. Because at the end of the day, politics is about people. It's about you. Maybe you're a recent grad or a new Canadian. Or maybe you're raising your kids or living your golden years out in retirement. Whoever you are, you deserve a real plan for the future. We've done a lot these past 4 years, but the truth is, we're just getting started. Canadians have an important choice to make. Will we go back to the failed policies of the past, or will we continue to move forward? That's the choice. It's that clear, and it's that important. I'm for moving forward for everyone, particularly them. Merci tout le monde. Joyce.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. Joyce Napier, CTV. Your opponents are all in Toronto preparing for a debate tonight. At the beginning of this campaign, did you not think it was worthwhile or worth your time to be there to debate them just because the campaign is starting? I know that you're going to be at a debate on the 7th, but that's 3 weeks from now. Did you think that it was wise to wait 3 weeks before you debate your opponents?
I am very much looking forward to the 3 opportunities we'll have during this campaign to debate with the other leaders. I think there are really important choices for Canadians to make, really important conversations to have. But I'm also really, really happy to be here on Vancouver Island this morning to meet with families like Lisa and Gray and others, and talk about what we're doing to make life more affordable for Canadians. Later today, I'll be in Kamloops, and after that in Edmonton tonight, and the opportunity to get out across this country, speak with Canadians and listen to them and talk about how we're going to build a better future for everyone and how we're going to choose a better future for everyone is at the core of what this election is all about for me, and I'm going to keep doing that.
But this is about today's debate, and you're not there.
I am very much looking forward to being in Edmonton tonight. I'm very happy to be here in Victoria today. Very happy to be continuing to talk with Canadians. And of course, I look forward to the opportunity to debate against my fellow leaders in the 3 occasions that we'll be doing in this campaign.
Morning, Teresa Wright, Canadian Press. You've said in the past that as a practicing Catholic that you are personally opposed to abortion. Do you still hold that view?
My view, and I've been very, very clear about it, is that every woman in Canada gets to choose what she does with her own body, with her own reproductive rights. No one can force a woman to choose when or with whom to start a family. It is her choice. That is my core conviction, and that is how I have actually led government over the past 4 years and ensured that every single candidate running for the Liberal Party agrees that defending women's rights and women's right to choose is unequivocal for the Liberal Party. Okay.
I've always been very clear that my deep conviction is that any woman, all women, have the right to decide when and how, at what time they choose to start a family. Every woman should have access to abortion and reproductive services. For me, this is an issue that reflects my own profound conviction, but it's also a political conviction, and that's why I ensured that all the candidates running for the Liberal Party will unequivocally defend women's rights at all times.
To Canadians, what the personal views of politicians are on abortion when they have committed not to reopen the debate, as both you and Andrew Scheer have done. In English and in French, please.
I think I've been extremely clear that my position is that every single candidate for the Liberal Party of Canada will always, as MPs or ministers or whatever, defend the women's rights unequivocally. That is a choice I made, and it's a choice that is extremely important, not in the abstract, but in the concrete, to millions of women across this country. They need to know that their leaders will be there to defend their rights. That is something that I've made clear on, and I think it's up to Canadians to determine whether or not other leaders have been equally clear.
Catherine Lévesque, La Presse canadienne. Sur l'aide médicale à mourir, il y a eu un important jugement
medical
hier.
assistance in dying, there was an important ruling yesterday. You have 6 months to respond. Obviously, this is a very important issue for our country. It's also a very delicate issue for many families that are reflecting on these choices and that are going through very personal and difficult times. And I've always said that the government must find the proper balance between protecting the most vulnerable and respect for people's rights and choices. Now, finding that balance has always been very delicate, and we are glad to see that there continues to be discussion, including in front of the courts, and there will be future steps to take as a government. So we will be reading that ruling very, very closely and carefully before we make any future decision. But we will always seek to achieve that balance, and I'm very open to the idea that the courts have ruled on how perhaps we could improve that legislation.
When it comes to medical assistance in dying, we recognize that this is a deeply personal, extremely important choice that Canadian families often need to go through. That is why I feel that the government's responsibility is to establish the balance in the right way between two very important competing responsibilities, that of protecting our most vulnerable and at the same time respecting people's rights and choices. Getting that balance right was very much what we've worked on over the past 4 years with our bill on our law on medical assistance in dying. We always knew, however, that there would be continued evolution and reflection in the courts and in society about the next steps to take, and we welcome the fact that the court has pronounced itself on this, and we look forward to reading very carefully the court judgment to decide what our next steps will be. But we will always look to strive that right balance between respecting people's rights and protecting our most vulnerable.
Juste pour être bien clair, reconnaissez-vous qu'il y a des failles dans le projet de loi?
Do you believe there are flaws in the legislation? And will you amend the criminal code? Well, we've always acknowledged that it's an important step in this country to develop legislation on medical assistance in dying. But we also knew that it wasn't the last word, that society would evolve, that there would be court rulings, and that people's views would bring us to reflect differently and ensure that the balance struck is the right one between individuals' rights to make their own choice and the protection of the most vulnerable. And that's why we are very open to that reflection, and we will be looking closely at the ruling.
Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott want you to step in and waive cabinet confidence so they can speak to the RCMP about potential obstruction of justice. Shouldn't these two former senior Liberal ministers be able to give evidence to the police without being muzzled by cabinet confidence?
We actually took an unprecedented step in giving out a waiver that allows for all matters, all issues relating to this matter to be discussed at committee, to be investigated, to be followed up on. This was something that we did that is unprecedented because we know that it was important for people to be able to examine what happened in this matter. And that's why we took that step.
And yesterday you said you respect decisions made by professional public servants, namely the decision of the clerk to deny RCMP access to witnesses and cabinet documents. Why did you not respect the professional decision of the Director of Public Prosecutions to deny an out-of-court settlement with SNC-Lavalin? Why the double standard?
The job of a Prime Minister is always to stand up for the public interest and to stand up for people's jobs. That's what I did, and that's what I will always do. Canadians know that I will be there to defend their jobs every step of the way. That's what Canadians can count on.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Hier, le Premier ministre François Legault a demandé à tous les partis fédéraux de s'engager à ne pas bloquer,
asked the federal parties not to interfere with the secularism legislation. So what exactly does that mean? Is it not important for Quebecers to know exactly what you mean and what you're going to do? Well, I think that Quebecers know exactly what my personal and my government's position has been on this. We do not believe that any state should legislate on what people can or cannot wear. We believe that a society that tries to legitimize discrimination is moving in the wrong direction. However, I also understand that this is a critical discussion and that Quebecers have to have that discussion with their government. I remind you that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is there for the precise reason that we have to allow citizens to challenge laws with which they disagree, and that's exactly what is happening at this time. As I said, we are reflecting very carefully as to whether we should intervene in this matter or not, but for the time being, I believe it would be counterproductive for us to do that. However, on such a fundamental issue as this, I believe it would also be irresponsible to say we will never intervene in this type of process. But we have to use good judgment to determine whether it's the right thing or not for the government to intervene. Now, this legislation is popular in Quebec. Are you not just trying to leave the door open for Quebecers to vote for you by saying we're not going to challenge it or we may not challenge it? Well, what I can say very clearly to Quebecers is that I will always defend fundamental freedoms, the fundamental freedoms of everyone. That is my position, and they can expect a government led by me to always do what needs to be done to defend everyone's freedoms. At the same time, I recognize that it would be counterproductive at this particular point in time for the federal government to engage itself into this debate in a cavalier manner. And I believe that Quebecers are using the Charter of Rights and Freedoms right now as they should. They're using it to challenge a law that they feel is unfair.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Mercedes Stephenson, Global News. President Trump is making an announcement on flavored vaping products today, possibly banning them. It's something that Canadian pediatricians have called for as well. Are you looking at a potential ban on flavored vaping products in Canada?
I can tell you that Health Canada has been engaged with this issue over many months in consultations, working with experts and researchers to determine the right path forward. We've already taken a number of steps on vaping and harmful tobacco use, and we're always looking to do more to keep Canadians safe. But our decisions will be made based on evidence, based on data, and we will have more to say as Health Canada continues to do its work of keeping Canadians safe, including from the dangers of vaping.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. Tom Parry with CBC News. High prices, high housing prices in Vancouver and Victoria and the GTA have been a problem for a long time. So why didn't you tackle this in your budget? Why are you waiting until now during an election campaign?
Actually, we tackled this in a number of ways from the very beginning of our mandate. One of my first roundtables in Vancouver was around the high costs of housing and the measures that a federal government can do to make sure that housing is more affordable. The first one of those, obviously, is a national housing strategy that puts forward $40 billion of the federal government re-engaging in housing to ensure that rentals, that new homes are more affordable for people right across the country. But we recognize there was more to do, and that's why in our budget in 2019, we put forward the National First-Time Homebuyers Incentive, which actually gives 10% off, up to 10% off the price of a home for a first-time home buyer. That's a program that applies right across the country. What we recognize and what we're announcing today is that there are areas in this country, as you named, Victoria, Greater Vancouver, Greater Toronto, where the housing prices are so significantly higher than the national average that there needs to be extra help through that the first-time home buyers incentive. That's why we're moving forward on creating an extra incentive in those areas for higher housing values and higher income levels so that more people can afford their first homes. There is a real challenge across this country of people being able to afford their first homes, and that's why this government has done things concretely in Budget 2019 and continues to announce that we will move forward even further to help Canadians afford their homes.
On the proposed tax on non-resident home buyers, you're calling it modest. if it's modest, what good's it going to do?
We have seen from British Columbia's example that even a modest tax can have a significant impact on speculation, foreign speculation in housing markets. One of the knock-on effects, though, of the BC initiative is that that has pushed capital to other parts of the country where there isn't that modest speculation tax. That is why we feel it is important to create a national measure right across the country based on BC's success with it to ensure that foreign speculation doesn't make housing less affordable for Canadians who, as we know, are looking for places to live.
Mary Brooke for West Shore Voice News. The NDP have a stronghold on the island and the Greens think they have some room to grow. What does the voter on Vancouver Island look to in the Liberals? Where do you think your chances are?
We continue to put forward a strong plan to move forward on housing affordability as we have today, on growing the economy in a way that both creates jobs, as we have seen Canadians create 1 million jobs across the country over the past 4 years, at the same time as we've lifted 300,000 kids out of poverty, 900,000 Canadians total. We know that to move forward in both protecting the environment and growing the economy goes together. We've been a government that has done more for protecting the environment, which is something that matters deeply to Vancouver Islanders as well as people right across the country, than any other government. So I'm very pleased to be able to put forward an incredibly strong team of 7 great candidates on Vancouver Island to give people on Vancouver Island the opportunity and the choice to be part of a government that's going to continue to move forward for all Canadians.
Last question. Prime Minister Mary Griffin with Check News. You're starting the first full day here on Vancouver Island in this riding. Just 2 things. Climate change is at the forefront of many people's concerns. Your government has bought a pipeline. How do you allay the concerns of people who have real anxiety and concerns about climate change, which is a major issue on this island, and how would you expect to punch through this election, knowing that climate change is at the top of mind for so many here on Vancouver Island?
I think Canadians understand that we need to both grow the economy and protect the environment at the same time. And indeed, you cannot grow the economy unless you are protecting the environment. We have to move our economy towards greener, towards cleaner, and that means using all our resources to invest and to pay in that transition. It doesn't serve anyone to leave tens of millions of dollars on the table because we can't get our resources to markets other than the United States right now. It doesn't serve anyone to be putting more oil by rail, to more oil by tanker truck, when we know that pipelines to well-secured marine area, well-serviced marine areas are the safest way to transport and to export our natural resources. We know that investing all the profits from the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion into the cleaner energy transition is something that all Canadians understand. And here on Vancouver Island, you have demonstrated both an understanding of how important it is to protect our environment while developing our natural resources responsibly. And that is something we're going to continue to do as a government. Merci tout le monde.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau going to talk to, looks like one of the kids who was listening to his little news conference and Q&A with reporters. Let's just see if...
Say, hi, my name is Gray. No, it's tougher than it looks, isn't it?
And it may get tougher because this is only day 2 of the election campaign. Liberal leader, as I mentioned, Justin Trudeau speaking in Victoria, there to make a housing announcement and certainly taking lots of questions from reporters, everything from why are you not at the debate tonight to pipelines to the whole question of abortion, which Andrew Scheer, the Conservative leader, faced earlier today when he was at a riding in Toronto with a Conservative candidate who is anti-abortion and has always, been very vocal about that. CBC's Janice McGregor is listening to all of the leaders today. You listened to Jagmeet Singh in Brampton, to Scheer in Toronto, now Trudeau there in Victoria. From this latest appearance by the Liberal leader, what really stands out for you, Janice?
Lots to unpack here, Suhanna, but I want to start by noting, we were talking about the abortion stuff, how it forced sort of Mr. Scheer and his candidate to come out and talk about that earlier. It was a Liberal MP candidate's tweet, Carolyn Bennett's tweets, that kind of forced the Conservatives to talk about that today. But I have to say, it also stood in the way of Justin Trudeau getting to his message today. You heard there a couple of members of the press traveling with him using their question opportunities today to push Justin Trudeau on the abortion question. So, sometimes things maybe don't work out quite the way parties plan. I think he probably wanted to be talking about what they didn't get to until almost the end of that question and answer period. This was the first kind of new policy drop event of this campaign for the Liberals. An expansion, really, of something that they were just starting, a homebuyers incentive that took effect on September 2nd, that made it a little bit more affordable to buy a home, gave people a bit of a break, with the understanding that when they sold that home, or in 25 years' time, they would pay that break back. But in the meantime, they would have lower monthly mortgage payments. Now, the criticism of the existing program that is just in the process of being implemented this fall, frankly, is that it offered too little support in priority markets like on the West Coast and in Toronto. So now Trudeau today saying that they would offer kind of a strengthened program for higher priced homes in these very, very tight and expensive housing markets. He also said that the federal government was a future Liberal government would be doing something that BC did, bring in a vacancy and speculation tax, which BC feels has had some success in cooling down hot West Coast housing markets. Trudeau today announcing that would be something the Liberals would do if they continued to be in government. So that was what's on offer platform-wise. But in terms of tough issues, you heard him talk about being asked about the debate in Quebec over the wearing of religious symbols. He was pressed on that also yesterday. I think it was interesting because here he did seem to leave open the possibility that the federal government would intervene, something Quebec's premier yesterday explicitly said he didn't want to see happen. He said, you have to exercise good judgment, but he does seem to want to leave the door open to intervening, perhaps a response to those who wanted him to take a harder line on this, Suhanna.
Thanks for that, Janice, and we will talk again. CBC's Janice McGregor in our nation's capital. You're watching CBC News Network. I'm Suhanna Marchand. We are back in just a moment.